decent man. You show us how to perform. Well, your style's been changed because we're so vain. But you'll take a sunset for stone. Look out, honey, you're bad, bad, bad. Here you come, said you're bad, bad, bad. Gonna sing for a time. You're the hottest ticket in town. Well, you show us new moves, cause baby, you're smooth. You're above us.
Well, get those life vests zipped and clipped, strap down those rods, and stow away those tackle bags because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers podcast. I am your host, Keith Nicewonger, and I hope this episode finds you with 5 for 25 in your live well. In this episode, we're going to address a concern brought forward by Bass Tour Angler Randy Blauket on his Intuitive Angler YouTube page regarding the possible use of live scope electronics by tournament anglers to intentionally snag bass. But first, if you like the content that we produce on this channel, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you. We are building our viewership, and your follow means a lot to us. We'd also love to hear from you, so leave us a comment and let us know what you want to see. We are the Western representatives for Duckett Fishing, pro-driven rods, reels, and baits. Duckett is building a Western presence, and if you haven't seen it yet, you soon will. New independent dealerships are popping up all the time. Duckett Fishing, you know these guys, the strongest pro staff in all professional bass fishing. And all Duckett products are designed and tested by these very same pros. Find out about the Duckett lineup of pro-driven products by going to their website, duckettfishing.com. The one thing that every bass tournament relies on is the integrity of the event. Rule enforcement, angler conduct, ethics, and a belief that an event has been conducted fairly play a heavy role in the public's acceptance as well as other competitors' acceptance for the sport that we love so much. The idea that an angler could intentionally snag a fish has long been a concern, and various organizations have taken measures to ensure that this does not happen. We've seen the Bass Pro Tour employ the use of boat officials, the BASS Elite Series uses marshals, and all organizations use random polygraph testing for its competitors. Traditionally, the events that involve spawning fish are the ones where intentionally snagging can be an issue. In those events, anglers are required to show a boat official or marshal or their co-angler that the fish has been caught inside the mouth. Recently, with the increased technology that anglers have at their disposal, the question has been raised about whether or not anglers are using live time electronics to intentionally snag fish. This is a whole new ballgame when you think about it in terms of an angler's ability to see fish on a screen, see their lure on a screen. It's a real big question. The techniques of ripping a flutter spoon, ripping a crankbait, or ripping a jerkbait while watching fish in live time does bring up the question as to whether or not an angler would use the technology to snag an active fish on a ledge or a point. Looking at inactive fish stacked on a spot and given the stress of these high-level tournaments does make one wonder if another competitor would be tempted to rip a crankbait or a spoon through a group of inactive fish. Recently, I had the opportunity to ask Boyd Duckett, president of Major League Fishing, how his organization would address these questions. I think you'll find this to be interesting and reassuring. Switch gears right now a little bit. Talk a little bit about Major League Fishing. First thing I wanted to ask you about was something that I've heard recently. There's been some talk about pro, because we can see everybody fish in these pro tournaments. Every organization live streams their events now. Guys intentionally snagging fish, and whether or not fish should be weighed if they're not hooked in the mouth. What does Major League Fishing think about that? Is it something that has been an issue, or is it? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think obviously, I guess our league position would be that, we don't want anglers intentionally foul hooking fish. That's not sporting. That's not what we intended to do. So our rule against, snagging fish is when you're sight fishing,
right,
not bed fishing.
Right.
If you can physically see a fish and you intentionally snag it, or which really it's just if it's hooked outside the mouth and you can visually see the fish, it doesn't count.
Right.
So that takes care of any of that situation. Now, if you accidentally hook a fish and it's outside of the mouth, which can happen, especially with treble baits, jerk baits, crank baits. Oftentimes, I've had them come by with the treble hook and a jerk bait inside their mouth clearly, jump, and then it end up hooked outside of the mouth, but I still caught the fish. So that's a legal fish. You weren't sight fishing. You could not see the fish when you were fishing for him. And really, there's no benefit to not counting it. You caught the fish. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything illegal. And that's the wildlife agencies, the state level. That's pretty much all the states fall within that category. So we feel like that's a fair fish and it should be counted.
Now, going back to the live optics thing, the live electronics, though, it's becoming more and more of a thing where you are seeing fish on your monitor, and sometimes we get out on those ledges and we see those fish and they're sitting there and they're not fired up, but we still want to catch them. Ripping spoons, ripping crankbaits, things like that. Major League Fishing has a boat official. Can a boat official declare a fish hooked that way not scoreable, or what would the term be?
So obviously we have what we call the sight fishing rule, which means if you can see the fish, you can't snag it. And that rule also goes on to say that you cannot intentionally snag a bass. So that's a little bit of a gray area. So in that situation, that would be the official's call in the boat. We haven't had that called. I don't know that has been called. But if you were in a heavy group of fish and you put on a
flutter spoon or something.
Yeah, well, or something with 9 trebles on it.
Okay, yeah.
Whatever, something better than a flutter spoon. They don't hook them very good.
Yeah.
But, a saltwater bait with 3 sets of trebles.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
And you're just ripping through there, that official's probably going to let you know that that's an illegal activity. So, because that's not the intention. So we let it be, you cannot intentionally foul hook a fish. And so our we and our anglers follow our rules, and we're governed by polygraph.
Yeah.
So it's
it's fascinating to me because this was brought up on another podcast, and I heard it. And I thought, that's an interesting thing. But that Major League Fishing boat official is a real official. He's going to call you or she is going to call you if you drop a fish on the deck, if you release a fish, throw a fish back in the water.
Above the gunnel.
And other kinds of violations that can take place. And I guess they could tell you that fish doesn't count because
if they believe you're intentionally trying to foul hook a fish, that fish wouldn't count, and that would be the official's call.
Very interesting, yeah. Duckett mentions that Major League Fishing boat officials have the authority to rule a fish has been caught illegally. At this point, we haven't seen that kind of ruling made in an event. As technology improves, it does require rules to evolve as well. Randy Blauket's question got my attention. I know that we rip crankbaits. I know that we rip spoons. I know that we rip jerkbaits. Seeing inactive fish stacked on a spot is frustrating. Do we need a new rule for this? Get this. At least 2 hardbait companies unveiled jerkbaits at ICAST this week that are designed to work with lifetime electronics. See, the sport is evolving. There's no doubt about it. And we are looking at this technology, and now we are having baits made to work around this technology. Sport is changing, for sure. What will we say about the boat official who calls an angler for using live scope to snag fish? What will we say about the angler who gets called for using live scope to snag fish? These are questions that we may have to address at some point in the future. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your subscriptions. Until next time, keep both hands on the wheel, stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.